Dean, how are you, brother?
Yeah, good. You yourself?
Yes, can't complain. I've been in the garden for the last half hour, and my God, and I'm never one of these people that says it's too hot because it can never be too hot. But
Yeah.
blooming hell, it's hot.
It's a hot one. I'm in Aberdeen and it's over 25 degrees here, so people are spontaneously combusting in Scotland. Yeah.
Are they still blue?
Yeah, but they've gone a little bit white now.
Massive thanks for joining us, mate, especially at such short notice.
No,
So
absolute pleasure.
it's all kicking off for you with your book then. It's now released.
Yeah, well, the paperback got released yesterday. The hardback's been released since October, so that's had a good run at it. And obviously, we're supposed to be out now promoting the paperback, but because of the current situation we're in at the moment, I haven't been able to, to do that and attend the literary festivals and other events that we had scheduled. So it's all had to be via social media.
Well, I don't think that's been a bad thing, really, right?
No, I think there's a lot of positives from this period. Yes, I don't believe in the phrase "we're all in the same boat" because people have different boats. People are in different situations. But for myself personally, I've taken a lot of positives from this time. I've never spent as much time with my family as I have during this period. But just things going back to basics, just baking again, not wasting any food, just simple things going out with the family, having walks, going for runs, being physically active. So there's a lot of positives. And obviously now, as we're communicating now virtually, that seems to be on the rise and maybe a trend moving forward. So no, it's been good.
Yeah, good. I think as a podcaster, it's probably couldn't have been a better time, really, because I don't have to get in the car and go out and meet people. I just talk to them on this thing, and of course, everyone's trapped at home wanting new content to watch. So, God bless the apocalypse.
No, exactly, and I think that's helped me as well with business and everything else. Normally, when you're trying to get hold of someone, you're then waiting on another third party, and it just starts getting delayed. Now, everyone is at home; they've got no excuse.
So, Dean, I don't like doing big introductions. It's not. I'm not an interviewer. I'm not Michael Parkinson. I'm not Terry Wogan. I just like to chat to mates.
Yeah.
And I think it's the best way. But your story is pretty special. So I'm just going to give my little synopsis, and then we'll fill in the blanks as we talk. So, former member of the Special Boat Service, you've done your bit in the Middle East.
Yeah.
From what I gather from the literature, and I'll apologise to all my guests now, there was a time I would have read everybody's book before they came on my podcast. I'll be a liar if I said I even had time to read the books I want to read in my life, right? Let alone everybody else's. I'm reading about 2 pages of a book a night. I'm so tired now. So skydiving accident.
Yeah. Hey ho jump. Yeah.
Hey ho. High altitude, high opening.
Yeah.
And then cutting your life story short, you went on to cycle the length of the Americas and grab some world records there in the process, right?
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, and then so you rightly touched on there. I was ex-army. I didn't go the traditional route of the Royal Marines to the Special Boat Service, but having spent 8 years in Free Commander Brigade, and I was also the senior diving instructor for the Army, it was that natural transition for me. So much to the disgust of my mates at Hereford, I decided to go SBS and was one of the earlier members to come across from the Army. And I think now 15% of the SBS are Army. So pretty much one of the earlier guys that opened the floodgates. And as you mentioned then, I joined at the height of war and terror. I was doing operational jumps. We were doing hostage rescues. We were doing everything that you'd signed up to do. I was at the pinnacle of my career. I was living and breathing the life of a SF soldier. And as you rightly touched on there, 2 weeks before going back out on another tour to the Middle East, we were doing pre-deployment training, and I was doing a hey-ho jump, a high altitude, high opening jump. So unlike skydiving where you're clear of lines, when you exit the aircraft, you're still attached to the aircraft to open the parachute, static line it's called. And as I exit the aircraft, my leg got caught up in the line above my head. So my first concern was to clear my leg in time before potentially my leg getting completely taken off. I couldn't release it in time, and my leg got pulled up over my head and to the right. But thankfully, my leg did clear. But straight away, I knew there was a big issue. And at 15,000 feet on the limits of oxygen, I was drifting in and out of consciousness and also vomiting because of the pain. But my first concern was, how was I going to land this? No one else in the team was aware there was a situation at this time. So I still had to travel up to 30 minutes to the DZ. I landed it successfully. It was a great landing, one-legged, but unfortunately, the damage sustained on the exit. I tore my ACL, my MCL, my lateral meniscus within the knee, my hamstring, my quad, and my calf. So all the supporting muscles as well. So everything up until that point was going as I wanted it, and then all of a sudden, just a big curveball with this injury. And that was the start of the end of my career within the military after 16 years.
I'm just going to peel back there, because I didn't realize so many people were coming from the army to the SBS now. I'll be honest, I had no idea even people like yourself had done that.
Yeah, so they gone to the past where SBS had their own selection process and the SAS had theirs. They did a joint UKF selection, so both units came together. But what was happening was, if you were in the Royal Marines, you had the option of going SBS or SAS, and a lot of the Marines don't actually like diving. You know, you have to be quite comfortable underwater. It's quite an alien environment. So the SBS were losing candidates to the SAS because of that. So they then decided to open their doors, try service, because the Royal Engineers, where I came from, we have 500 divers. So there's a great pool of guys there to select from. So, and then once you had the likes of Afghanistan and Iraq kicking off, you had SF support group as well. So the paras SF support group would be working with alongside SBS. So they were getting good exposure, the way how we operate and everything else. And that itself is a good recruitment campaign. So yeah, there was an infill of army guys coming from various directions.
And I guess that in the Middle East, the diving's not all that important anyway.
No, not so much in the Middle East, no.
So did you say your background was engineers?
Yeah, so I was Royal Engineers. My father was in the engineers, so I followed suit. But then I went to 5/9 Commando to serve alongside the Royal Marines in 3 Commander Brigade. But I was very fortunate. I spent 8 years solid at 5/9. 7 of those were in with Recruit with the Brigade Reconnaissance Force, part of BPT. And also took a year at Limston. I was an instructor on the All Arms team as well. So I was very much immersed in that Green Beret environment. So for me, the SBS was a natural transition.
How is it with the language then, when you come from the army and you're working with Marines or the SBS, or you are in the SBS? Do you just adopt the naval language, or do you keep your own, or does no one really care?
No. Within the army, obviously, when you go 5/9, you then adopt the naval terminology, and then obviously when you're on joint courses with 9 para and things like that, you use wet, you use goffers, well, they use brews and everything else. So we very much like to promote that naval terminology. And then when we went to SBS, it was a natural transition. But it was good. I remember when I got married, I had guys from the SAS, guys from the SBS, guys from all over. So I literally had to do a little pamphlet, which was sort of explaining the slang and the terminology. Because even though, even when you talk about, Scran, when you call it Jackie Chan and things like that. So even the naval and the army terminology had a slang as well. So people were getting really confused.
What about the marching and the drill and stuff? I'm guessing you don't do a lot of that in the special forces, but
no, you don't.
Army's all this, and in the Marines it's all kind of slowed down.
Yeah. Well, I remember I remember I was at one of the funerals actually, so we're doing drill for that, and I remember you could have the Marines slide their feet in, and then we raise our leg till it's 90 degrees parallel and bring it in. So you could easily see who the army guy was from the distance. But when I actually got to the SBS, I wanted to get a set of Lovets, and as with the rest of the guys in the unit, because in the army we have like what I call a ginger fighting suit, the number 2s. I didn't want to stand out completely in front of everyone, and so my sergeant major, he went up actually to CGRM and came down and said no, I wasn't allowed to wear them because I didn't have Royal Marine buttons. So I remember going to a funeral at Hereford, and literally, the lads beeline for me because they could see I was the odd one out. You must be one of the army lads. So 2 weeks later, unfortunately, we had another funeral. I was like, I'm not having that again. So I went and signed a set of Lovets out anyway and just ignored CGRM. And I think everyone then since did that. But like I said, I was one of the early guys to go across. So it was almost all the teething problems I was dealing with, being one of the first.
What was the selection like then? That's
yeah, they say be a grey man, don't they? They always say be a grey man. But when you're an army guy going SBS and being one of the first, you're about as grey for about the first 10 minutes when they start calling out the roll call. But there was a couple of instructors on my selection who were X59 and 9 para. 9 para is the airborne engineers. And, when I used to get to the checkpoint on the hill, they'd like, stop, why are you going SBS? And I said, well, I like diving. They're like, that's a shit answer, grab a rock. So I had to pick up a rock, stick it in my Bergen. And that rock had to stay in that Bergen all the way to the end of the day. This went on every day for like 2 weeks. And I was I've had enough of this. So at the weekend, when I was home, I just, I Googled Bournemouth Beach heatwave. And there was a 2-page spread from the Centre of the Sun newspaper of topless women. So I printed that off, laminated it, and stuck it in my map pocket. So on the Monday, when I got to the checkpoint, the DS normal procedure was that, right, stop, why are you going SBS? So I put my weapon on my feet out of the mud, took this picture out, and I said, because that's not in Hereford. And they said, yeah, good answer. So from that day on, I didn't have to carry a rock, but I made sure I kept that picture in my map pocket. But just, again, understanding that, humour is one of the ethoses of Special Forces, and in the military anyway, you need to have a sense of humour.
Yes, exactly. Is it hard then on that hills phase? I'm always trying to get my head around it because I'm a different person at 50 mentally than I was when I was 18, right? Yeah.
I think I generally believe that anyone in the military can pass the hills. They're physically capable. It's having the right mindset, having the right approach, but it's also staying away from injury. That's a key one on the hills phase, is the fact that you need to steer clear of injury. And I'd done selection a few years previous and got injured myself on the hills. I had I tore my lateral meniscus, so I was always conscious of not a reoccurring injury. So I'd always make sure I was up 30 minutes before, taping my ankles and everything else. But I generally believe, if you're prepared properly. But what they do now, which is probably different from when you were in, rather than guys used to go on selection not knowing what selection was about, and you only get 2 opportunities. So a lot of guys would waste an opportunity either because they weren't physically prepared, or military skills they weren't prepared, or map reading. So now you have a briefing course at Hereford and a briefing course at Poole, whichever way you want to go. You spend a week with those units and you do a lot of physical tests, you do a lot of soldiering tests, so they will let you know whether you are ready to go. So you're not wasting opportunities. So the only reason you should come up is for injury, which is great moving forward.
And what is the actual dive training like?
So the Royal Engineer dive training, which we do before I go to the SF one, is very arduous. Everyone's heard of the Commando course, everyone's heard of P Company. But this course itself is one of the hardest courses in the military, because not only you need to be physically fit, but actually working and operating underwater. So in the engineers, anything we do on the surface, we do underwater, be it concrete, chainsaws, demolitions, the lot. And working in that contained environment at depth is very, very alien. So you need to be physically robust. So then going into the Special Forces, dive course is very different completely. Like in the engineers, we're divers. In the special forces, you're swimmers. You know, you swim shallow water. But for me, very comfortable in that environment, and it was good to obviously help the other lads who had just passed, you know, adapt to that quickly.
Gosh, so we're talking dry suit diving, right? Was that, or was it wetsuit diving sometimes?
For all engineers was dry suit diving, unless the water was warm enough. But you know, if you're going down to 50 meters, you need a dry suit. And it's pitch black down there. And again, with the swimmer canoeists with the SBS, it depended on the water temperatures as well. But you know, even if it's quite cold and you're in a wetsuit, you're still physically going for it. You're carrying all the equipment on you as well, and you can swim in up to 5 kilometers on an insertion. So you need to obviously be conscious of what you're wearing. But if you're wearing a dry suit, that'll affect your buoyancy, even if you're wearing a wetsuit. So you know what to wear and what works best.
Yeah, that buoyancy thing really caught me when I moved to a dry suit. Diving just became really difficult. I was either going up or I was going down. I could never just get that buoyancy. It's quite easy to get in a wetsuit.
It is. I mean, obviously, there's a difference if you're in here in the sea and if you're in fresh water as well. They all have different effects.
You wait till you're on an iceberg. Have you done that?
No, I've not done an. Well, we've dived in Norway. We've dived under the rivers in Norway in the fjords, but not on an iceberg.
I've dived on an iceberg in Antarctica, and then not only have you got the whole buoyancy with your wetsuit and your buoyancy jacket, but you've got the cold water, fresh water coming off the iceberg, and the salt water, literally. So you're in that part where the two meet, and 1 minute you're going up, next minute you're plummeting down, and you're doing all this to try to, you know, you're putting air into your suit to try and keep yourself buoyant, and quite borders on frightening.
Yeah, the submarines have that issue off the west coast of Scotland when they're coming in and they go hit the locks. Yeah, you know, when they come from the sea waters into the fresh water and they just drop.
Yeah.
And if you're not expecting it, especially if you're not supposed to be going past a certain depth, it can be quite worrying.
Yeah, I spoke to Duncan Faulkner literally last week, and he said they lost a guy doing that. The submarine plummeted, and some of the guys got off it, and one guy got dragged down. Or
we lose a lot of guys because the kit is self-contained, so it's 100% O2, so it gives off no bubbles. But it's a closed circuit, what it's called. But what it is, anything deeper than 7 meters, and it's toxic, so you can die. So you need to be staying between 7 meters and the surface. And if you have big drops like that, then obviously it can affect you. But if you're diving along in a shipping lane, big ship comes, you need to make that descent. So yeah, there's a lot of issues, and we lose a lot of guys we lose more through training, I think, than through operational.
Gosh,
you have to train for real, of course. So.
And how were your operations? Because your operations, I'm guessing, in the Middle East, they weren't very wet.
No, they weren't very wet. No, but yeah, no, they were great. And I was very fortunate to have joined at the height of the war on terror. So I was literally, when I got there, it was probably the busiest time for UK Special Forces as a whole. We were literally back to back. But living and dreaming what these kids nowadays play on Call of Duty, that was our day in, day out. So for me, I'd reached the pinnacle in my career. I was doing what I'd signed up to do. Operational jumps, dives, the lot. It was really good. I was really fortunate because you hear guys of especially some of the older guys. There probably wasn't anything since the Falklands for a long period of time. I think the Kosovo was the next one. Because I went to Kosovo with 5'9" Recce Troop, and that was the first tour for Recce Troop 5'9" since the Falkland Wars. That was almost 17 years later. So this period, very, very busy. I'd say very fortunate as an SF operator.
Yeah, I mean, if you're going to join up, you want to see some action. You don't want to feel you've missed the boat, do you?
No.
On the other hand, seeing that action, as we're finding in this wave of veteran suicides at the moment, is seeing that action opens up a whole nother can of worms. Did you experience any, I mean...
No, I was very fortunate myself. I'd witnessed it firsthand with a few friends. So I know guys that had it. So for me, actually, I was very fortunate when I was in the military. There was nothing that really stood out. For me, was actually, in hindsight, looking back, was when I left. You know, I didn't plan on leaving. All I'd ever known up until to this point was the military, 16 years, and then told that you'll now need to leave. So you've just gone from a tight-knit unit, having a role, having a purpose, knowing what you're doing for the next 2 years, know where you fit in, to all of a sudden being a civilian. How do I now fit into society? What is my role or purpose? And it's what's known as an identity crisis. And that, on top of the fact that I also had an injury and I couldn't even run across the road, that sort of, just added to the issue. So I did have a bit of depression, I think, at that point. And at that time, I didn't know. It's only later, in reflection, looking back. So that was how I sort of suffered, really, that identity crisis. How do I now fit in society? What am I going to do?
Mm. Did you go down the drinking route at all, or was...
No, I was for me, when I left the camp gates, this is May 2011. My wife was 8 months pregnant, so my main concern was I need to provide for my family. So that was my main focus. But also, for me, so the natural progression, without sounding like Liam Neeson, for people with our skill sets, is the security industry. So within 48 hours, I was out in Libya, and this was the height of the Arab Spring, helping setting up the DFID project with the British Embassy. So Gaddafi was now in Tripoli and had been surrounded. So in Benghazi, the oil and gas, the security companies, the media, the NGOs were all, forming up, ready for Gaddafi to fall. But I soon identified that the Libyans didn't want Libya being another Afghanistan and Iraq. Once Gaddafi had fallen, they wanted to take control of the country. But also that these large security companies were charging six-figure sums for crisis management and evacuation plans. But when I scraped the surface, there was nothing in place. So at this point, I was also trying to find a niche within the industry. So I flew home and my wife gave birth to our daughter. And I said, look, can we take the life savings out the bank? And she said, what are you doing? I said, I've got a plan. So I went back into Libya. And because of the huge proliferation of weapons, I bought 30 weapons on the black market. And I buried them between Tunis and Egypt. And just spent a month on my own in the desert designing and executing my own evacuation plans. And I then sold that to the oil and gas sector. So I now found my niche within the industry. So that sort of kept me busy and occupied during that period.
Where do you get the insight, the drive, the wherewithal to take on something like, I mean,
yeah,
when I left the military, I mean, it's a bit of a complicated story. I won't even go there. But cut long story short, when I finally came back to the UK, because I lived in Hong Kong after leaving the Marines, like, I couldn't picture myself getting a job stacking shelves in Tesco's. I felt so useless. Yeah. I thought all the stuff I learned in the military was just not applicable. All these people going, yeah, Royal Marine, anyone will give you a job. Most didn't even know what the Royal Marines were, right?
Yeah.
So I'm quite impressed and intrigued that you buried weapons in the desert.
Yeah, so I got the Pelly cases in, bought comms kit, and had handfuls of cash. But like I said, there was a huge proliferation at the time of weapons. It was very easy to get my hands on. What I did have a shortage of, however, was ammunition. I was really struggling to get ammunition, and I went back in 6 months later and dug them all up again, and replaned them, oiled the weapons down and made sure they were there. And, hopefully I didn't need them. I just knew it was more peace of mind that they were there should we need them in a situation. And in 2012, I just returned from the London Olympics, and I was in Benghazi, September 11, 2012, when the American ambassador got killed. I think there was a movie called 13 Hours.
Horrible. Yeah,
so I was there that evening, and I don't know if it was right place, right time, or wrong place, wrong time, but one of the German oil companies needed assistance. So I took 8 of their German oil engineers and got them back safely over 3 days through a safe house corridor that I had in the desert back to Tripoli. And because of the success of that, then 2 years later was the Tripoli War, which is a civil war between the militia and the government, which is still ongoing at the moment. And I was in Brazil covering the World Cup, and I got a phone call from the Canadian embassy saying, look, we need your assistance. We've heard that you're the man to come to. So I flew in from Brazil via London back into Libya. And I single-handedly evacuated the Canadian embassy, 18 military and 4 diplomats from Libya back to Tunis. It sounds very, sexy and very Hollywood, but in fact, what was the success of this challenge was understanding the tribal influences, the demographics and the politics within the region. It wasn't about being armed with weapons and bullying our way through. And that's what it was. It was just all about communication with the tribal elders. So everyone had this perception of the special forces as being offensive action, blowing indoors, kicking indoors and all this lot, which is what we do 25% of. And we're very good at that. But 50% of what we do is support and influence. It's hearts and minds, being able to understand, the demographics and the politics within the country. And I sort of took that mindset into this. And that was it. I didn't need to dig up any of my weapons. They're still there. It was just having the right people and chatting to the right people.
Wow. So you were like the ultimate kind of fixer, really. Is that what they call that?
No, I had a good fixer. So
you had a good fixer.
Yeah, any country. So I work in Yemen on my own, Somalia on my own, Libya on my own. Is having the right fixer, because I think a lot of countries and a lot of security companies are naive to think they can just come in and bully their way around. You can't do anything without that local influence. It's having the right fixer, because Libya's got 164 tribes. So my fixer in Tripoli would be useless in Benghazi. So it's having the right fixers who've got the right connections. And that takes time. But once you've got a good fixer, it's excellent. My fixer actually for this, so to execute this project, it was myself and my fixer, who was a 50-year-old internet shop owner from Worcester, and 2 fish wagons, which do that route every day. I didn't need anyone else. I didn't need any expats.
My God, it's real, it's like Jason Bourne stuff.
Yeah.
No, good credit to you, mate. Seriously. So you talked a bit there about other places in the Middle East. What kind of jobs were you taking on there?
Yeah, so the security industry is very diverse. When I left, I had the opportunity to go over to Dubai with a lot of the other guys and instruct over there. But for me, I wanted to learn more about the industry. I wanted to progress and build up my CV. So I took a risk and did ad hoc. So anytime a job came in, I'd take it. But for me, what was great about that is every time we had a phone call, it was a different job. So I trained the Kurdish Special Forces, designed and executed their training program in Erbil in Iraq. We trained the Presidential Close Protection Team in Kurdistan. I took the UAE Royal Family Super Yacht from Barcelona to Maldives. We did London Olympics. We did Brazil World Cup. I was out in Yemen teaching, setting up a security company. I went out to Somalia on my own and helped set up a security company. That every phone call was a different job. But for me, I was gaining more experience as we went along. And what was key, actually, I think the success of me in the security industry is that I took the risk to go into these countries and stand there face to face with them, sit down at their table or on the floor and eat, share bread and water. And they'd be getting emails from security companies in London or New York, and they're 10 a penny. The fact that you've gone in and understood the atmospherics and taken that risk spoke volumes to them. And I think that was what was the success of me in the industry.
Dean, what was I was familiar with the Benghazi embassy situation as much as you can be, when you sit in the southwest of England. I'm well aware that those guys were let down. Was it by Hillary Clinton who just denied that there was a military presence in the area?
Yeah, I think there was. Yeah, I think there was an element of that. I think what I'd heard, and it depends who you talk to. I think they were looking at reducing the budget of overseas projects and embassies for security. So that incident, be it coincidental or whatever, stopped them actually reducing the budget. And I think they even increased it in the end.
But wasn't it that those guys' existence was denied by?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I think a lot of it is denial. But I think that's unfortunately even that's one of the roles of special forces. You're there, to sort out an issue, and if it goes wrong and it doesn't look good for the country, they may deny that you're anything part of that. And I think that's that may even be the reason why we carry different weapons and we wear different uniforms, because they can say, well, they're not ours because we use the SE80A2, not the C8, the marker. You don't know.
Yes, my gosh. So let's go back to the parachuting, because you said hey ho.
Yeah.
High altitude, high opening. I never realized that was static line. I thought that was still your skydiving gear, but you just, when I did skydiving, we call that hop and pop. Hop out, yeah. And you quickly pop your parachute, and then you sail down to earth. Literally, you're in the sky like 30 minutes or something, as opposed to 1 minute.
Yeah. And
you float down. One guy, I was saying this on another podcast, one of the guys we used to skydive with, we would all do the skydive bit. So free fall, 1,500 meters above or 1,500 feet above the ground, whatever it was, pop our chutes. And now this guy would hop and pop. So he'd jump out, put his chute straight away. And he had a pint of tequila and lemonade, black masking tape to his webbing here. He had, and a straw, and then he would just float down to earth, basically getting pissed. I don't know how they let him get away with it. No, even the skydiving director would jump out with this guy sometimes, and they never said anything to him. It's just, it's America. That's all the other guys were stoned anyway, so it wasn't like this guy was unusual. But yeah, I didn't realize in the special forces you're on a static line when you
only on hey-ho. Halo is, as you said, the hop and pop. But the hey-ho, obviously you all want to be opening at the same time, so you're together, and you have to then travel for a distance. So because it opens straight away, you get that maximum distance, and the advantage as well of going hey-ho, not on halo, you don't need oxygen because you are on the limits. That's the thing, you're on the limits and get the maximum time or distance, and you can travel up to 50 kilometers on hey-ho. So you're well off target, so no one's going to hear or see you. So it's just another insertion method. So that's what we were doing. We were just practicing all the various insertion methods, and it just means that on the day of the race, if we need it, we're all signed off and operational.
Is it the same chute then that you use for a halo, or is it a different type of parachute altogether?
A different type of parachute. It's I think if I get it right, it's almost like a BT-80. So it's a bit larger than your free fall ones, because they're obviously for turning. Because it's larger, it gives you more flow and more forward propulsion. But if you have a malfunction, I've had two malfunctions. The second parachute, the reserve, is smaller than the main canopy, but it's a fast one. So although you've lost that height from the rest of the team, you will still get to the same DZ.
Wow, that's fascinating.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
So I thought I had my malfunction, my pull cord here somewhere.
I've never had to do that, fortunately. I think every skydiver, you pull it and you do your 3 count in your head and you look up and you're like, oh, thank God for that. It's there. But you don't even do the count when you get used to it, do you? You feel it coming out off your back, and you feel you slowing down, and it just becomes so. I mean, I've not done any, nowhere near the jumps you've probably done, but but it's still that when it opens, you're like, yes, great.
Well, because it was smaller than the main canopy, it rattled a lot. So you're nervous anyway because you've just had a malfunction. I mean, you're looking up and this thing's shaking, and you're having to hold on. You're going for about another 30, another 30 minutes in the air, just holding on for dear life. So we're just thankful you are alive.
That's unusual though, to have a malfunction. I mean, some guys do like 40,000 jumps and they have maybe 2 malfunctions in that 10-year period.
No, we when we started introducing them, I think there was like 20% of malfunction. There was quite a lot. I remember that day we were like the 3rd or 4th stick, and each stick had 1 or 2. So yeah, but you just don't know. You just know it was a bad bunch or whatever. You don't pack them. It could be anything. So, but that's obviously why they have that system. They'll trace what the issue is, but like I say, you know what to do. And for me, it's almost you've done it. So you survived it. If you have another one, you can still. For me, was that you can still get to the target area. You're not dropped off like 6-7K off.
Yeah, you don't want to be separate from your mates. That would just be, oh dear, I'm in enemy territory and I'm on my own. God, yes, awful. No. How long did it take you then to recover from your injury when you had this accident?
So I didn't really get chance to properly recover. Even when I left, I wasn't fully recovered. I mean, I talked about evacuating the Canadian Embassy. That was about 5 years from when I left the camp gates. And during that period, I sort of neglected my own physical and mental well-being because I was just focused on the private security industry. So, but my injured leg now was 2 kilos lighter than my good leg because of the muscle wastage. And my wife said to me, I came home from that trip and I normally just, recock. I just deservice and reservice my kit ready for the next phone call. But one of my shirts was covered in blood because I'd administered first aid at an RTA on the border. And I said to my wife, can we get the blood out of my shirt? She said, yeah, we can. I'm more concerned in why there's blood in there. So I told her what I'd just done. And she's like, have you heard yourself? It was almost like a throwaway comment. I just evacuated an embassy. For me, it was an eye-opener. I disconnected from society. And what it was is the pin had then dropped. I was trying to match that adrenaline rush I had while still in the special forces without coming to terms with the fact that you've left, you know what I mean? And that was a big eye-opener for me. So chapter 16 in the book is called Dead or Divorced. And that's the stage we're at in this story. So my wife said, look, come work with me. I'm a property developer. And I thought, okay. So I did that. And I bought a push bike off Amazon. I've never cycled, since I was a young boy. But straight away, although it's 8 miles there to the office and back, straight away, being physically active, I felt a lot better. I just felt this huge release, just doing something again. And like I said, this leg was 2 kilos lighter. So I never really recovered from it from leaving the military. I sort of neglected it.
And how did your big cycle come around then?
So I was doing property developing with my wife, and you can imagine with my backstory so far, you can imagine me sat in these architects and planners meetings looking at the heating system and plumbing drawings. I wasn't really interested at all, more interested in the coffee and the biscuits. And my wife could see that glaze over my eyes, and she said, you need to do something. And I'm not saying go bury weapons or evacuate people from across countries. So it was about a month before my 40th birthday, so I was getting massive ground rush. I'm going to be an old man in a month's time, and I'd always fancied doing a world record. So my wife said, well, why don't you do it? What are you going to do it in? And I said, well, look, cycling seems to be good, and it's not hampering my knee. My knee wasn't being bothered whilst being on a bike. So as I mentioned, I live in Aberdeen. I was thinking of cycling from Aberdeen to Dundee maybe. And my wife then found the world's longest motorable road, which is from the southern point of Argentina to northern Alaska, which is 14,000 miles. And so for me, having only cycled 20 miles, I applied for the world record. And 6 weeks later, Guinness came back and said, yes, you've been successful on your application. So that was the start of the cycle challenge for me. But then I needed to, for me, to do it. So for me, I do a lot of stuff with charity. I used to be the SBS ambassador for Scotland. I'm the Royal British Legion ambassador. And a good friend of mine, I'm going to massively name drop now, is Prince Harry. So him and I were on an FAC course back in 2007. And we got partnered off for the 6 weeks and remained good friends ever since. So I phoned him up and I told him my intentions of this bike ride, and met him in Kensington Palace, and he told me about a mental health campaign called Heads Together, which is very much quite popular now. Everyone's aware of it. But in 2016 was in its infancy stages. So I was aware of mental health in the military, but I wasn't aware of mental health throughout the whole of society, be it postnatal depression, young children, teenagers, all the way through to adults. So that's what I did. I decided to, right, I'll do the bike ride for the Heads Together campaign. And my aim was to raise £1 million. And
I gather you did that.
Yeah, so we raised just over £900,000. The world record when I applied, when I set off, was 117 days, and I was fortunate. I smashed it by 17 days. Became the first man in history to do it under 100 days. So I did it in 99 days and 12 hours and 56 minutes. But that wasn't my original plan. And I took 10 days off the South America world record. My plan was to, try and do it in 110 days. I went the opposite of everyone else. I spoke to the previous record holders, and they all went from north to south, and all their issues were in South and Central America. So I thought, well, why take a gamble with the second half? Things like bureaucracy, languages, spares for the bikes, the hottest deserts, and the highest mountains. So I thought, well, why take a gamble? Get those issues out the way early. And then when you get into North America, you can reassess the situation. So I wasn't looking at it from a cyclist perspective. I was looking at it from a military perspective. So I just took a military set of orders, put it on the challenge, and just crossed out ammunition. So I was quite proud in the fact that I did that. I did the opposite of everyone else. But I made great time in South America, took 10 days off that world record, and I got to North America on day 70. And I was 14 days ahead, and I thought, perfect. I can have a day's rest here or there. My wife then rang me and told me we'd been invited to Harry and Meghan's wedding, which just changed the dynamics completely of his challenge. So going into the phone call, I was 14 days ahead of the world record. Going out 10 minutes later, I'm 1 day behind. So I then had to catch up even more through North America and Canada. And then when I got a week outside from the end, I cycled North America in 11 and a half days. I had 17 days originally planned for it, but I was cycling a lot of the time in the evening, get extra time in the saddle. And this professional cyclist had announced on social media that day, and he was sponsored by Red Bull, Austrian team, that he was going to, I think he had 3 other world records, that he was going to be the first man to cycle this route in under 100 days in August. So for me, I just wasn't comfortable with that, and I had to cycle for 22 hours in the last 30 hours in -18 to make sure that I came in under that 100 days. So it wasn't the original plan. It's just how it evolved, and how thankfully for me, when the information came to me, I could act on it. But I think our military mindset really helps a lot with that. You can have the best plan in the world, but it doesn't survive first contact. You need to react to what's happening on the ground, and what was happening on the ground kept changing, and I just had to react to that. So I think that helped a lot with this challenge.
Yeah, I think we're good like that. That was one of the biggest issues, not biggest, I didn't really have any major issues, but when I ran the length of Great Britain, my only goal was I wanted to run an ultra marathon a day, and I carry all my equipment. So I'm camping, like yourself probably, I'm camping as I'm going along. And everyone just kept saying, where are you going to be on this day? And I'm just like, I don't know. I'm heading south, doing my ultra marathon a day, or at least that's the average that I want. I don't know. And I got a real sense there of how many people must not live their dreams because they freaking want to plan everything to the last, I did no planning. My only plan was I bought a ticket to John O'Groats and I had a compass, and as long as it said south and I was running that way, that was my plan, right? I mean, I figured I'm not going to die because I'm essentially running along the road. So at the worst case scenario, I flag down a truck and they get me out of there, right? So I wasn't being reckless or anything. There was a couple of reckless bits in the Scottish mountains, but I completely get you that, right? Today's going to be different. We're going to do a 36-hour push, or it's I've got to do this thing. It's the same with so I spoke to Lou Rudd, SAS, who's second man to ski across Antarctica, and he talked about Colin, who was the first guy to do it. They basically did it together. It's all a bit boys' own silly, really, but they did it exactly the same time, within a few hours of each other. But Colin O'Brady says in his story, at the end, he was so, like, he didn't want to lose this record. He went for like 36 hours skiing or something, non-stop. But that's just what adventurers do, isn't it? You know, you can't.
I think for me, what was unique about this is I wasn't a cyclist, and that's where I stand out from other adventure explorers. I take a sport or discipline, and I find the biggest challenge. So I've cycled the world's longest road. So actually, my sponsorship marketing team did a SWOT analysis at the beginning of the whole campaign, when we put pen to paper, and like the strength, the weaknesses, the opportunities, and threats. And the only weakness that came back was my arrogance towards the cycling community, which I just took as a strength. I used that as a bit of fire in my belly. But thankfully, no one said that in the cycling community. But for me, I've enjoyed cycling, and I'm now like, right, what's the next challenge? So just take that same mindset, that same all that military style planning, and just put it into something else. So I don't take it too serious, really. But I think there's also an advantage in that, in the fact that not naively you're sort of you don't know much about the sport. I know enough about the sport, but not too much that it then starts playing with my mind. You know, I've got nothing to compare it to. So I had, originally I had a sport team with me, and we had the documentary team as well. So I had to think about them as well. And the sport team, they were from a biking background, and they were like, "You can't sustain this." And I'm like, "Well, why not?" They're comparing me to themselves or other people and things like that. So for me, I just went, it's all about, especially cycling, it's very, they're quite geeky, and they'll admit it, they love data, heart rate monitor, power and things like that. And for me, I had that on my computer, but I just looked at the speed and distance, and I just went on how I felt each day. I didn't go on the numbers. I just went on how I felt. And I think that's quite an advantage, I think, doing new sports, because if you've been cycling all your life, you'll be comparing yourselves and all these, analyzing the data. Forget about that. You know what I mean?
Oh, exactly. Yeah, I'd someone did some research for me as I was running the country. I went, Chris, I've been looking up, is it possible to run the length of the UK? And here's the world's greatest ultra runner, and he's saying, no, it's not. You'd have to train for about 10 years. You'd have to be running up to this amount a day. You'd need a professional medical team, physio team, psychological team to get you through it. And I'm like, I didn't even do any training. I did no training. I hadn't run. I'd been disabled with a bad back for two years. And I just went, this is my dream, and if I don't make it come true, no one else is going to. I stuck the backpack on.
Exactly. Someone asked me yesterday, I was guest speaking yesterday virtually, would I do a challenge with someone else? And I sort of said no, because, I'm in control then. If it doesn't succeed, it's on my back. I'm not reliant on other people. So, if you have the right mindset, you can do it. But I was the same. I'd only been cycling 3 weeks. I thought, well, I'll go do Land's End John O'Groats, because my challenge was 15 Land's End John O'Groats back to back. So for me, if I couldn't do one, how was I going to do 15? And everyone said to me, oh, you're not ready yet. You need to be bike fit. You need to know about cadence. I thought bike fit was fitness. I said, well, that'll come with time. And actually, it's the measurements to the bike. I did it all completely wrong. But for me, just a mental boost that, it was difficult. Don't get me wrong, that Land's End John O'Groats. And I did the reverse end 6 months later, but found it a lot easier because I was now fit. I knew about cadence and I had the right size bike and things like that. But you sort of have to go through those hardships to learn from them. So
let's talk some practical things, Dean, because I as an adventurer, or that's what I'd like to be doing when I'm not sat on doing Zoom meetings. What kind of bike did you have?
So I had an Orbea Terra. So Orbea are a Spanish company. So originally we had Commando came to the table, but Commando were asking loads of things which involved Prince Harry, and I said, no, I'm not interested. But Orbea are a Spanish brand. They launched the Orbea Terra about 6 months before I went off. So the Orbea Terra is an all-road bike. So it has clearance to have thick road tires, thick gravel tires, or thin road tires. So it was the perfect bike for me. But Orbea, also their sister company is Orca, which do all the lycras and all the triathlon kits. So I got a 2-for-1 really with Orbea. But they were a great sponsor actually, and they gave me all the bikes for the training, and still now. Although I said, look, I'm not doing any more cycling challenges. They said, no, you just keep riding Orbea for us. But yeah, no, that was the bike I had.
Did you change the tyres as you went along?
We did. There was no distinction between supported and unsupported for the world record. And obviously, chatting to the previous record holders, a lot of their issues going on their own solo was trying to have spares for the bikes. So having the support team and having the wagons meant we had the spares with us. But you think of the Pan American Highway and you think it's going to be quite gravel roads. In South America, there was only a 10-kilometer stage between the Argentina and Chile border that I needed gravel tires. Other than that, it was nice smooth road tires all the way to Cartagena. I just stayed on nice slicks until I got to Dalton's Highway, which is the last 400 miles in Alaska. It's where they film ice truckers. So that road there is very gravelly. So actually, from a 22,000 kilometer route, only 410 kilometers I needed gravel tires. The rest were smooth slicks, which really, really surprised me as well.
Mm. What about the Darien Gap? How did you negotiate that?
Yeah, so the only Guinness send you all the guidelines that you need to do, but Darien Gap you just cannot cross. So if you for the South America world record, I had to finish in Cartagena. So I thought, well, you can either fly from Cartagena or there's somewhere else further south. But because I wanted the South America record, I made sure I finished there. So we left the vehicles. So logistically wise, we had to change vehicles in every country in South America. But my wife and my PA and 2 of my mates drove the vehicles. We had vehicles that were going to get shipped from Fort Lauderdale to Panama because we could then take them all the way to Alaska. But my wife got a phone call 2 weeks before when I was in Ecuador saying they hadn't been loaded on the container. So thankfully, my wife had foresight. They flew out and drove the vehicles 4,000 miles in 8 days from Fort Lauderdale through Mexico all the way down to Panama.
Wow.
So when I broke the world record in the morning, I then flew from Cartagena to Panama City across the Darien Gap. And an hour later, they came in and handed over the keys. So very much a big influence in the success of this as well. So everyone sees you on the challenge, but it's that sort of, my wife was a campaign director. She was running everything around me. So yeah, so that helped massively.
Ah, great stuff. And what were I'm one of the things I'm quite pleased about in my life is I've visited or I've backpacked through every single country in the Americas.
Wow.
Not every island, but most of them as well. And I've had some great, just to live in the Amazon jungle and fish for piranhas that's why my life has been, it's why as an old man now, I'm just so happy that I've lived my life,
Yeah, true.
But that's not to say it doesn't get hairy down there.
No.
There was one point where every single other traveller I met had been robbed at gunpoint. All of them, they'd all lost all their luggage. I think I was one of the few people that was fortunate enough.
Yeah.
I always carry a machete, obviously, because I'm going in the jungle. I don't think that really had much to do with it. But did you have any challenges like that, Dean?
Oh, well, obviously I had a support team and documentary team, so they're a lot more risk averse than myself. So I had to obviously consider their welfare. So in South America and Central America, I would only cycle from first light to last light, so we weren't on the roads in the evening and exposed ourselves for that. But actually, I remember going through Colombia and Mexico, and the sport team and them we're all panicking, and they're all like in the vehicles. And I'm like, well, you're the one, you're in the vehicle, just lock the door. I'm the one who's on the bike, exposed out here. But I never felt any threat at all. People were so hospitable in South America. It really surprised me, and I did enjoy it. Yes, we got to Central America, and there's a bit of bureaucracy at borders where, you know, they want an extra $20 to get you across. But, you know, that's just the way of living over there. You expect that. In fact, we got our vehicle broken into. One of the vehicles got broken into in Colorado, outside the hotel. So we thought we left all the issues, or all the potential issues were in South and Central America, when in fact it was North America. We got one of the vehicles broken into. No, but very fortunate we didn't. And I think obviously myself being in the security industry, you know, you go from, in the special forces, I say, from being, you know, some of the bravest people in the world to the biggest coward. You know, a great security operator can see a potential threat and just go around it.
Yeah, good stuff. What diet did you have? Were your support crew taking care of all that, or did you stop at cantinas and stuff?
Yeah, so it's very easy back here to say, right, your nutrition, you're going to have this, this, and this. But when you got out there, it's whatever's available. So when we got into Argentina, because it was so far down south at the bottom of the earth, it was ham and cheese, or cheese and ham, whichever way you looked at it. And then, you know, we got to Chile, it was chicken and rice, but we could stock up in service stations and in shops. When I got to Peru, and every border crossing as well in South America, that they would take the food off us. So every time we crossed into a new country, we had to buy a load more food. But we got to Peru, and there was no, all the service stations didn't have decent food. The shops were shut, so I had to dine out in the evening. So I got food poisoning twice when I was in Peru as well, which wasn't nice, but you could still cycle with food poisoning. It was only really when we got to America, the culinary options were a lot bigger, but I just couldn't take on enough calories. So I had to approach it as a polar expedition. So I started the challenge at 90 kilos. I was heavy. I didn't look like a cyclist, but I finished at 78 kilos. I lost 12 kilos. So you were losing weight from start to finish. But as you know, your body can only consume 7,000 calories a day through food. The rest has to come through, you know, fluids and everything else. So I was burning about 9,000 to 12,000 calories a day. So I was losing weight day by day.
And yes, I'm just conscious of what I think our friends at home will want us to talk about. Yeah. So I just wanted to say, how did you meet Harry then? Is that through the charity work?
No. So I was on a forward air controllers course back in 2007, and Harry was a young second lieutenant with the Blues and Royals. So he obviously wanted to go to Afghanistan on tour, but he couldn't just go to Afghanistan. He needed a role, or a role within his regiment. So his CO, his ex-Hereford guy, said, well, go away on your FAC course. So that was it. And then him and I got partnered off for the 6 weeks, became very close friends, and just maintained that relationship going forward, you know. And as I said, he used to be a guest at my table for the SBS boxing, and we just kept regular communications. And I think, you know, because of who he is and what he does and everything else, it's not many people in the world he can trust. And with myself coming from my background, he knew he could be open, and, you know, it just stays with me. And I think that's one of the main reasons him and I, you know, 13 years on, are still close friends, and very fortunate to get invited to the wedding.
Brilliant. I like Harry, but I have to say it annoys me the way he keeps borrowing a tenner, because I know I'm never going to get it back.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, just speak to the security, ask them.
I'll get it off you, Dean. So just sticking on the cycling, next year, a former police detective that I know, Brad, hello Brad, if you're watching, and we're going to cycle north to south across America.
Nice. Yeah.
I know they come out with these cliches, and I know they're cliches, but it is the hardest mountain bike route in the world. So it's basically down the Grand Divide, so the mountain range from Canada down to Mexico.
Is it on the west coast? Is it along the west, across the Rockies?
Yeah, down across the Rockies. Yeah. Yeah. So maybe we could touch base about that, mate, and I can get a few tips off you about things that you found helpful. Maybe talk about
So
sponsorship and charity and all that sort of stuff. We're going to do it for Rock to Recovery, which I'm sure you know about.
Yeah, no, any sort of tips or introductions, or Bay have got great mountain bikes. But if you look at Mark Beaumont did the Pan American Highway, but he started in Alaska. He then climbed the highest peak in North America and then did the same route as you, sort of handrailed the Rockies down to Argentina, and then did the Aconcagua, I think, down there. But for me, when I chose my route, when I came in through, because there was 3 options. There was the West Coast, which you're doing, which is the lumpy one. There was another one, which was just more central. And I came in actually through San Antonio, Texas, and then went upwards towards New Mexico, Colorado, Wyoming, up to Calgary. And
okay.
So that's the route I came. So I still had to cross the Rockies, but it actually, when you looked at the ascent and descent, it was a lot smaller. So that's why I chose that route. So I wasn't doing the hardest hill climb in the world.
Well, yeah, because yours was all about time, the shortest time, wasn't it? And
yeah, very objective driven. Like you said, you mentioned when you backpack around Americas, you must have seen some amazing sights. I can only really remember 10 days that stand out of 99 days, because I was so fixated on time. I was very disciplined in my timings. I broke the days into 4 stages, because nutrition and hydration were key. That I just cycle as fast as I could for 2 hours, get off the bike, have food and water. But I was 30 minutes and I was back on the bike. I wasn't having a selfie with a llama. I wasn't chatting to the documentary team. And then I would just go for it. So I was very much like this. Whereas my next challenge, so I'll probably tell you now, my next challenge, like I said, I've enjoyed cycling, is to kayak the River Nile from source to sea, which has never been done before. But because there's no record to beat, I can, I'm not going to be tapping my watch. I'm going to enjoy the experience more, and it's going to be more about the adventure rather than trying to smash records.
Well, you should speak to my mate Chaz Powell then, because he's walked some of the biggest 3 of the biggest rivers in Africa, and
really,
yeah, I'll put you guys in touch because he's a fascinating man.
Yeah,
it's just, again, another person that's living the life that I'd love to live, and we need to have 9 lives like the cats, don't we? And we can do all these things.
Yeah, but I'm excited about the Nile one. I talked about evacuating embassies, working in Yemen and Somalia. Everyone's very quick to tarnish like the Muslim communities and things with one brush, when in fact they're so hospitable and really kind people that if it wasn't for them, I wouldn't be able to do it. And that's what I'm looking forward to about the Nile, is the fact that actually the challenge is in the hands of the locals. I'm relying on the locals to help me, get me through this. And that's one thing I enjoy about these challenges is meeting the locals and, understanding their cultures and everything else. So that's one exciting thing I'm looking forward to about the Nile.
Well, you're never going to find better hospitality than the Muslim world, because that's what they do best,
Yeah. Well, Leveson Woods walked the Nile, so he's a good friend as well. And he told me in Sudan that they won't have you sleeping by the river. You have to go into their house. And he said they just keep feeding you and feed you. He said you'll put on weight in Sudan. So I'm looking forward to Sudan.
Dean, tell us about your book, mate. That's another adventure again, isn't it?
Yeah. So the book Relentless. I'd never, the reason, as we touched on there, I did the bike ride, so I wasn't, evacuating embassies and burying weapons. I didn't see it as a career in guest speaking or doing other challenges or writing books. So Relentless is my story. What's great about this book, and I call them biceps and bullets. There's plenty of biceps and bullets books out there which go from sort of military to media, whereas this is in 3 stages. It's the military, my childhood, and my the military, the private security, and we've just touched a couple of the stories within the private security sector there. and then the bike ride at the end. But it starts at the beginning with my father telling me that I would last 2 minutes in the military. And that's been very much one of my drivers in life, or one of my motivators, to prove people, you know, someone to you blue in the face, or you can just go away and do it. And your actions speak a lot more louder than words.
Yeah, we can achieve anything we want, can't we? If that's what we want to do. And I think sometimes if you've got a parent that's not supportive.
I don't know whether he wasn't supportive, because my father was in the military as well, and my grandparents. I reckon it was actually reverse psychology. I'm not too sure. I wonder whether it was unfortunately, he passed away 4 years ago. He never got to see the bike ride, but he did get to see me to go to Special Forces. So I just sometimes wonder whether it was reverse psychology. But the fact that I still talk about it now, if my son asked me he was going to join the military, I probably wouldn't tell him those words. I'd probably give him some comforting words and of advice. A different era completely.
All my son's ever heard from me, and he's Sonny, a little lad, is you can do anything you want, son, and you will do it, and you're brilliant, and I love you loads and loads and loads.
Yeah.
Just stuff that a lot of us as kids, we never heard any of that stuff, No,
it's a different world completely. And like I said, anything, I generally believe, I don't believe the word impossible. I just feel it's not been done yet.
Was it difficult writing your book? Did it?
No, it wasn't. I had so I got introduced, my literary and media agent introduced me to a ghostwriter. So trying to find a ghostwriter, once you've got the right ghostwriter, because for me, I'm from a military background, and I didn't want to, as we were talking earlier, start translating acronyms and all this lot and the language. So there's a guy called Geraint Jones who's he's a best-selling writer. He does a lot of fiction from the Romans and the Legion area as well. But he's ex-military, so he understood when I was talking to him. He knew what I was talking about, and so we would just call. We would just chat on the phone to each other each day. We start at the beginning for an hour, and he would, I would talk, and then he would ask certain questions. So I think it was great working with him, because if I was to write the book myself, it may have been slightly different. The reviews from the book are excellent, and I'm very fortunate. I've got it, endorsed by Ranulph Fiennes, Bear Grylls, Leveson Wood. There's some big names on there. But people have read the book in 24 hours, 72 hours. But if I was writing it, I'd probably go into a bit more detail, because I was always conscious of the SF community. I've always been conscious about keep maintaining my integrity and my relationship with the group. So I was always writing it on them reading it, and Jez said, look, the majority of readers don't know I'm from the military, and it needs to flow. Don't worry about these bits. So it was good actually having that, and then when I got it and read it, we could change things around. So for me it was really good having that. We finished the book in 2.5 months from start to finish. It was done.
Wow, that takes me a year. Well, as we said before we started speaking, it's taken me 2 years to write my John O'Groats book, because of my YouTube commitments. It's 2.5 months.
If you're writing it yourself, it takes long. Jez is a ghostwriter. He was getting paid to write it. It's his job. So I think he used to say we'd have that call for an hour, then he would just go type 2,000 to 3,000 words that afternoon, and the next day we'd be on the call. But then, then it sort of takes time as well. It also has to go through the disclosure cell, so the MOD have to sign off on it. And I think that's what the MOD said. The MOD loved the book because I didn't go into detail about the Special Forces. I didn't have to, and I didn't want to jeopardize the guy's safety and everything else, because there were so many other stories out of the military, which they couldn't, they couldn't govern, they couldn't red pen it. They said, well, it's your story, you know what I mean? So that was the luxury of that as well. So it went through that process quite quick, and they were very helpful as well. Actually, they weren't putting red tape everywhere. They were, giving us advice along the way. So it's good.
Yeah, apparently that the MOD are good if you work with them. Yeah. They wanted me to put all my podcasts through them. Yeah. It just can't happen, I think I haven't been in the military for 25 years or whatever it is, and it's not like me and my guests are discussing state secrets. Or occasionally I do get it, they pointed out where someone's disclosed something that it's very tenuous. It's really tenuous, but technically, yeah, I guess that's kind of, you know, secret information. But but no, I guess your book is more, you know, you're not talking about your operational stuff as much.
But the thing is, as well, is that, you know, I know, I've signed the official secrecy. I know what I can and can't talk about. You know, even when I go on like Sky News or LBC Radio or Hello Magazine and things like that, they're always fascinated with SF, and they always ask the questions. And I'm very easy to deflect it. And I know what I can and can't say. But nowadays, with the likes of Google, the information's out there anyway. You know what I mean? If someone said to me, "Oh, where the SBS base?" I'll tell you, Poole, because if you Google it, it's in Poole. But if you ask me another question, then I might not be able to answer. So, you know, you have that flexibility. You just know where the line is and not to cross that line. And again, with the MOD, they like to be, and I've maintained a good relationship because I haven't flanked them. I haven't caught them out by surprise. I've been very transparent from the start. You know, from the off, me and Prince Harry doing a promo video together. That was it. That was me then out as Special Forces, and it's like, okay, so that's out there now. It's just, you know, just limit what you say, but you can't take that back. You know, I still get them now and then saying, oh, you know, you're on Sky News, it mentions Special Forces. Whether I go on Sky News to talk about apples, pears, and bananas, they don't care. They just see you as Prince Harry's Special Forces friend, and that's out there in the domain anyway. So I can't get that back. But I know, like I said, where the line is and where not to cross it. As long as you stay on the right side, you should be fine. Dee,
what we should talk about is, other than obviously promoting your book, what are you up to as we speak?
So the plan was obviously the Nile project. I'm supposed to be kayaking, finishing my kayak training and heading off to Africa. So we have a documentary team, the same guys that filmed Levison Woods walking the Nile. They're assisting me with this. So we were chatting to broadcasters. Obviously, everything's been put on hold at the moment because of the situation. So we'll see where we'll look at the lay of the land in a few weeks. But my wife's property developing. She's building a wine bar and a private members club across the road. One of the things that's come back from the book as well is me being a security guru. So why not, you know, keep my hand in that? So I'm setting up another security company to keep that going. So we've got lots of things going on. The British Legion, I'm an ambassador for the British Legion. Next year is the centenary of the British Legion. So I'm doing a big challenge for the British Legion next year as well. So just, I won't give away anything on here, but we know putting a lot of pen to paper, and there's going to be some exciting projects there. So yeah, lots going on. Juggle that with homeschooling with the kids. It's busy. It's busy.
Good. It's good to hear, mate. It's good to hear. It's all exciting stuff. Any links? We'll put links to your book and your social media and whatever below the video, so people can make contact with you.
Yeah, no, please do. Yeah.
Dean, stay on the line, because there's a couple of things I'll speak to you about after. I want my tenner back from Harry, that's for sure.
With interest.
Mate, absolutely. Thank you so much for coming and sharing your amazing story.
Thank you for having me.
People are going to love to listen to this one. I urge everybody to buy Dean's book. Get a taste of real life instead of bloody soap operas. And yeah, mate, let's pick this up again at some point, because as I always say with all my brothers from the military, we know we haven't even scratched the surface.
Yeah, no, I genuinely believe, you know, everyone thinks, oh, you've got a book, you know, about your life. I said, that's the first chapter, you know, things, you know, it's just the beginning. There's a lot more still to come.
To everybody at home, massive thank you for watching another episode of the Bought the T-Shirt podcast. Huge love to you and your families. Please look after yourselves. Please like and subscribe if you did like. If you didn't like, I don't know what you do, to be honest. you're doomed. And if you want to support us on Patreon, the link is below. Much love, friends. Hello, friend. I hope this finds you well. My name's Chris THRALL. I'm a former Royal Marines Commando, and I fought my way back from chronic trauma and addiction to live, work and travel in 80 countries across all 7 continents, achieving all of my dreams and goals along the way. Now I pass my simple system on to other people, but I can only help you if you like and subscribe. So please do so, because you get one life, and if you live it right, one is enough.